Welcome to Say It Sister, the space where we tell the truth with courage, compassion, and no filters. This week we're talking about something that's hard to shake, the rise of the so-called Manosphere. It's a world selling power, dominance, and success, mainly to young men who feel lost. When we watched the recent documentary, what we saw wasn't strength, it was heartbreak. At the core of it were boys, abandoned, grieving, traumatised even, turning their pain into performance. We are here to help women to become empowered, to make powerful choices about their lives, and to raise amazing sons and daughters. And here we are with a counter ideology that wants to promote both men and women's low self-worth. Old gender roles and really unhealthy images of what it is to be a real man or a real woman. We're here to challenge that. Lucy.
Yeah, hello. Do you know what? We are two women in our midlife, and we absolutely see through the BS and the facade. And we remember when we were kids, we were told that if boys were mean to us, then obviously it meant that they liked us. And now we know that's absolute BS. But, what we see now is absolutely vile hatred towards women. Even when we put stuff on our socials, the vileness of the comments of these trolls or these incels, and then you go and look at who they are, and they're just everyday regular blokes, which then calls us back to the whole Giselle Pellico thing. They are literally there amongst us, and we know that even in our children's schools, they are being plagued with this male dominance rhetoric because these kids are seeing it from the age of 10, 11, as soon as they've got a smartphone. And they're then going and perpetuating that and being the cool kids by giving the female teachers a load of grief, basically, and just saying, you can't tell me what to do or know your place, woman. And this literally happening in our schools right now.
Yeah.
And I think back when we were told that we could have it all. That was the Gen X kind of 1990s. Women, you can do it all and have it all.
And I
Um,
think, and you can also be men. I think we were told we could be men.
oh, absolutely. And also it was the new age man who was there seen holding the baby. I've got that Athena image right in my
Yeah.
mind, I'll keep that image. But it was a real time of liberation and freedom and hope. And it was like Cool Britannia and all that kind of stuff where we're like, actually, we can be it all and do it all. But there was still this absolute expectation of these gender roles. We could enter the man's world, but we still got to keep our women's role. We've still got to get married, have babies. And then we like got to this point and we're now educating our girls to say, no, you can have some of it, you can have part of it, you don't have to have any of it, or you can have all of it. It's absolute choice. And this is what is now getting really worrying with this red pill incel manosphere is they are pushing against this because let's face it, women are becoming more successful. Some of the girls are saying, no, I don't want to settle down, or at least not yet. And they are blaming women's choice for
Yeah.
their loneliness. Um, and it is impacting all of our lives. And we know, you and I, we can see behind the bravado. I think a lot of women in particular can, and quite a few men, they can see behind it, but women are really talking about it, and we're thinking about solutions. We're thinking about what can we do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my that's my rant so far.
Well, there's a lot to take in on that, isn't there? And I think, I think when we were younger, we didn't necessarily challenge the family and children. It was almost like you got to a certain point, you would meet somebody, you would settle down and have a family. Like that was just, even though we were like, out there living our lives and we had careers and we had dreams, that it kind of, the family element slotted in somewhere into that
Yeah,
dream.
yeah, we weren't allowed to give that part of the dream up. We weren't told that
And
that
it
was a choice.
it wasn't really something that I even questioned, to be honest. I always felt like I wanted that. So, that sometimes I wonder and I think, well, was that just because that was societal or did I really want it? And it's a question. It's a question I still
Mm.
have, you know what I mean? And I have no regrets though. That's one thing for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that I have made the career and the family work, but it has come with a lot of challenge. It's not been an easy ride, and I think that's what the younger generation, I'm going back into women here, are seeing, is like the impossibility of how do I keep the career and how do I make the relationship and the family work. And actually, if there is no potential father, husband, boyfriend, partner, whatever you want to say, in there that actually could really, really be a good partner, then they're choosing not to, or they're
Yeah,
choosing
and
not to
that's
go with their
causing
careers.
problems.
And
Yeah,
that's,
because, girls, we've always known, mature more quickly than boys.
yeah,
And so when you're in that, the 20s and you're dating, the girls are, or the young women are a lot more mature. They're already, laying down the foundations of the rest of their lives, while the boys maybe not so much, that they might be going, to the pub or to the footy, or still in a very selfish mindset. And then you've got these videos, these podcasts, books, you name it, who are saying, um, no, it's your right. The women should be submissive. And then you've got the women, or the young women, saying, no, I see all the red flags now. I'm educated. I see it. And we've just got this complete clash
yeah,
of ideology that's out there. And yeah, it's getting dangerous, but equally, I'm so glad of Louis Theroux's documentary, and also when Adolescence came out, and that was like, the huge talking point, because there are lots of men and fathers out there who don't want their sons
yeah,
to go down this route, and they don't want their daughters to experience this.
yeah.
So it is creating a change. Um, but right now it's still everywhere.
Yeah, let's go into the, like the insights that we've had from watching the program and from having conversations and from who we are and what we do. Now, we know that being a teen is really hard, and we all remember that. Now, we obviously we're girls, so we're coming at it from another point of view. But I mean, I'm just thinking about my own life. But when I was 15, I had a boyfriend who was 19. He had a job, he had a car, he was absolutely gorgeous, and I went out with him for about 5 years, I think, and I knew I wasn't going to settle down with him. But there was no way I was going to be dating. I mean, dating's a big word, isn't it? But like going out with somebody who was in my class at school, because when I looked at the boys, I didn't see anyone there that could be a boyfriend. Now, recently, somebody from my school life, one of the boys from my class, sent me a message on Instagram, and he was like, "Oh, you were always so sophisticated," is what he said. That's how he remembered me. And he's such a great guy anyway. And so we had a little bit of like backwards and forwards. And I was like, God, it's so interesting to see how people view you, like
Yeah.
as sophisticated and mature. And I was like, and I always was, I wouldn't say I was sophisticated, but I was definitely mature. And so, again, how much of that is training? How much of that was genuinely me? I'm not quite sure, but I was
Well, I
always
guess
growing up fast.
you were in an adult relationship because you were with somebody so much older. So
Yeah.
you were already immersing yourself in a world that was older than your school years. But as long as you felt emotionally ready for it, not an issue. Whereas, yeah, this lad wasn't in those spheres, so he was acting like a normal, probably 14, 15
Yeah.
year old lad.
But we didn't have back then, this whole um these influencers, and we didn't have the phones,
No.
and we didn't have access to things that were obviously steering young boys. So, I'm just sort of trying to put myself into the field of this of my life, but we lived in very, very different times.
Yeah.
And so now these, young boys are being groomed ultimately. That's the way I see it. It's a
It is
grooming.
absolute grooming.
Yeah. And if there is, I mean, a part of me goes, where are the parents? Where are the parents? How do the parents not know? Um, yeah, and I actually can't question that, because, or answer it actually, but it's more like we've got this social media influencers, it's so toxic, and they're basically telling these young boys how they need to behave. And beneath it all, what we're seeing is really deep grief that is old, I would say, from their childhoods. And I suppose when you've had a lot of hurt in your life and you haven't turned into that hurt or done the work, it's very, very easy to sort of turn that pain back out and actually look at ways to sort of hurt other people. The ones that are being hurt, I would say, are minority groups, the boys that are being groomed to go into this, way of living. and the girls, and obviously the parents as well. So there's a lot of people that are going to be hurt by this. Um, but for us, I think the thing we really wanted to name was the fact that this is about pain being disguised as power.
And it is seductive, you know. There's these bros who are parading around with really sexy women, fast cars, living their life, having all their other bros around them who adore them, and they are chatting online on their lives, getting this fake friendship. And these young kids are looking and seeing, I could do that. But what they're not seeing is, like you say, underneath, there's a lot of pain and loneliness that they haven't healed. So they're saying, come be like me. My life is awesome. But they're only seeing what they want to project. And
Yeah.
let's face it, every single young boy, young man, like us as teens, they're trying to figure out how to be popular, how to get the girl or boy, how to fit in, how to belong. So if they're starting to hear their mates at school use this misogynistic, homophobic, racist language, and then they're going online and seeing these bros who have apparently made it and they're awesome. These are the role models that they're looking at, but it's all just smoke and mirrors. Um, and yeah, you asked the question, like, where are the parents? The parents are doing their bloody best, because as soon as your daughter starts getting to year six, maybe when she gets to year seven, she's going to want a phone.
Yeah.
You're going to want her to have a phone because she's going to be getting to school herself. Her whole social life is going to be on that phone, because that is where they hang out. Because kids don't go and play in the street, they don't go and knock and
Yeah.
call for kids anymore. And so you can't escape it. Well, you can just have an absolute ban and it'll be the better for them. But emotionally, when they're saying, but all my friends, you want your kids to fit in.
Yeah.
And it is just so dangerous. So the parents literally are doing their best. They are aware, but I don't think until some of these documentaries have come out, they've really seen just how toxic it really is in those rooms.
I'm even hearing of like parents, not at the school where my daughter goes, there are parents, they're picking up children from like the primary schools, seven, so let's say seven, 8, and 9. I don't know what the actual ages are. And when the kids come out of the school, the mum or the dad gives them each a phone. Now, for me, I haven't seen anything like that, but I've had things come through in the chats that are around phones and gaming, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, can we not go down this road? I must be that annoying parent. I'm like, carrier pigeons only is what I always write, because I feel like, if we do go down the phone road, there's not going to be anything. It's not going to be a smartphone, for sure. She will not be getting a smartphone. We're pretty solid on that one. So she's going to have a phone that is a basic phone, because there's just no way I want to open her up to that world. I feel like, if we go back to the Manosphere, what I actually saw was abandonment, violence in the home, poverty. I heard stories of suicide and homelessness.
Yeah.
That's what, for me, that's what I saw when I watched it. I saw all the bravado, I saw the aggression, I saw the blatant sexism, misogynistic behaviour. I saw all of that as well. But underneath, that's what I saw, and I just thought, this is super, super sad. And actually, if we were going to tell the stories properly, that's what we should be talking about.
Yeah. And you know what? When we were growing up, there were there was a lot more support for young people. There were youth workers, there were youth clubs, there were places that we could go and hang out. But obviously, austerity's come along, slashed all that. So, we know that there are gangs, there are county lines, there are, manospheres. There's all of this going on, because these boys are trying to figure out, where do I fit in? And so that's where, as a society, we have to come together and say, right, how are we going to fix this? If the government isn't going to fix it, what does it take? And yes, it might be to say, to our schools and to the other parents, we're making a pact, we're not going to give our kids these phones. It might be I chose to do scouting because I thought, right, I need a positive outlet for my girls to be able to grow confidence and grow skills. I know plenty of dads who have taken up being a football coach for their local team so that their kids have got that outlet. Because without the the societal structure, these boys, unfortunately, they do get into the hurt and pain. And so when you talk about the bros who are making it big, actually, yes, all of their stories were about pain and yeah, they had trauma in their lives, and all kids will have some kind of trauma, but it's about how safe and what support are they getting in their lives. And yeah, if you can create that stability, these boys won't need to go down that route.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think,
think that's where, as a society, we're missing out.
and I think it's the next insight that we had, which is really about feeding on low self-worth,
Yeah,
because being attached to a phone, algorithms, hits, likes, the money, watching the money going up. Obviously, you could see through the program that when Louis was going on the shows, they were getting even more traction and more sort of stuff coming through. It's almost like, it's like, I know, like I've worked with a lot of rich and famous people, and I see the addictions to certain things, like the attraction and the addiction, like the need to be loved, the need to be liked, the need to be approved of, the need for so much money. I've also met a lot of people like that who are so incredibly lonely
yeah,
and ill, actually, underneath. So there is this like illusionary thing of like, look at my life, I have all this stuff. Look at the beautiful girl, even though I disrespect her. But actually, it all feels really, really lonely and quite cheap on the inside. We've both been on our own journeys with that, with like success and money and materialism, and like I've got it all, but I'm not happy on the inside. We know that now because we are like, we are in our midlife journey, so we understand that. These are kids that don't
yeah,
understand that, and it's a little bit like how women get pressured into beauty as young girls. Like if
yeah.
I've got the perfect skin and the perfect hair and I weigh the perfect size, that's what women are sold, that's what the girls are sold, then I'll be happy. Well, this is exactly one of those things. So if I follow these bros, they look like they've worked it all out. They're successful. I'll be happy. I'll fit in. I'll be part of that, and I'll feel like I've got something that's important. But it's ultimately pseudo self-esteem. So
Yeah,
it's,
and do you know what? I don't actually hate the message that they're giving the young guys that you can create your own life. You can achieve anything you want. What I don't like is the way that they then say, and to do that, you've got to hate on everybody.
yeah.
You are the supreme one. You are the dominant one. You're not a real man unless you do X, Y, Z. That's the bit that is the problem. The starting point that, do you know what, we're all broke. We're all trying our best. We've all got our issues, and the only person that's going to get out of it is you. That, if they just stopped there, would be an amazing
Yeah.
message. It's all of the other stuff that they do for clickbait to get them followers, to get the money, to get them then subscribing with their playbook. That's the bit that is the real issue.
And that's then goes back to the system, because if we are selling hate over love, and hate is the currency, and hate is the thing that, like, it's like adrenaline, like it's like watching extreme sports. You could go get that from watching extreme sports, or watching people doing crazy stunts on their like skateboards or whatever. Like there's enough of like adrenaline fueled activities that are not about hating, any other human being, where you could get that source from and actually, really get into it. But we are talking about a system that is ultimately promoting hurting other people to get by. Now, I think, we go back to the patriarchal conversations that we always have. It was always hidden before.
Yeah.
Now it's very, very open. It's like you're going to get here by hating on women, by showing your power. You're going to get here, and that's what's going to make you successful. Whereas before it was like, we'll just hide all this.
Yeah.
We'll hide the triads and the control. We'll hide it, but that's ultimately what's happening. Now the masses have got on board with it, and they're still being used as puppets because they're still basically, there's still always going to be somebody who's powerful and who's perceived to be weak. And who's got the power, who's got the fire, who's got the money. And it's this kind of thing that's
And
playing out.
that's the problem. The weak people They look at everybody above them and say, I want that. I must be really low self-worth. I
Yeah,
must have really, I've got really low self-esteem because I'm not as good as that. So who can I suppress to make myself feel
yeah,
better?
yeah,
And that's every marginalized person out there. It's a rigged game. Um, and that's where we need to be having those conversations with our children, with our brothers, etc., to say, you see the game is rigged. You see that the stuff that you're coming out with is based on hate. Let's talk about it. You can't tell them they're wrong because obviously in their mind they've
yeah,
been brainwashed to say, I'm better than you, you don't know. So you've got to start engaging into conversations and saying, right, what are your beliefs? What are you hearing? Where does that come from? And start then having that rational conversation. And often it's like, so do you see your mum like that? Do you see your sister like that? Or if one of your best mates spoke about your sister in the same way, what would you do?
yeah.
And it's that kind of like trying to show them how absurd their thinking is, but you have to show examples rather than just then meeting the hate with the hate, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is that thing like boys need real role models, men who are
Yes.
present, men who excel, men who are gifted, whatever that looks
Men
like.
who are
Men who,
kind.
yeah, men who cry, men who love deeply and openly, men who love their mums, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, their sisters. It's as simple as that. It's so obvious to me, but and girls and women need to see this too.
Yes.
And that's really the simplicity of it. It's not the world that we're living in right now, but it's the simplicity of it. Um,
I don't know. I do think it's not all that. There's this microcosm which is going into our young boys' minds, but a lot of let's just say our girls, they are seeing good male role models, hopefully not
yeah,
everyone, but they have got good male role models in their lives where hopefully they get a cuddle from their dad. Not all of them are pedos, not all of them are assaulters, so
no,
there are enough decent good men around to be able to soften that. And that's why, yes, this is a problem, but actually, if we focus all our time on the problem, we don't actually see that there's a lot of good parenting and a lot of good systems and families out there. And this is exactly the reason why the girls are turning around and saying, my
yeah,
dad doesn't treat my mum like that, so why would I go out with a boy who says those things? And this is where the chasm gets bigger. There's just going to be a lot of lonely boys unless something comes in, people, society, community, the government, everything comes in and just says, come on, guys, let's detox you from this stuff.
yeah.
Let's show you another way. Yeah, I refuse to think that it's hopeless.
No, and I agree with you on that. And I think, for me as someone who is married, I Rich, it was funny because my dad, when I was growing up, was very active with me. He did so much with me, actually. He would go and take me places. He would always pick me up. To be honest, he still does. I was out recently and I said to the doorman, I said, he said, are you all right? Because I was waiting. And I said, oh, yeah, just wait for my dad to pick me up. And he went, your dad? I started laughing because I realised how silly it sounded because I'm nearly 50. That my dad's still coming to pick me up from outside the pub. But it's
Well,
like,
he's a real man.
but
That,
you know what I mean? But then I was like, how nice is that
yeah.
that my dad, I'm nearly 50 and my dad is coming to pick me up from the pub. And Rich was still inside and he was saying goodbye to some people and he came out. So we both off we both went and my dad picked us up and I was like, oh, I'm like, kind of like living my life right now and it's a beautiful moment. But he was there and he was very active. He was very present. He did so much. He would take me off to the weekends. He'd take me to the markets, which I didn't actually
He was
particularly like.
present.
He was
Let's just
present,
say it.
and
Yeah, he was present.
he would also like do the cooking, and mum and
Mm.
dad shared the cleaning. So I had this like very sort of Spanish dad who was quite macho in his way, but so soft and gentle, and
Mm.
they shared everything, and
So why wouldn't you choose that for yourself? It
exactly.
just makes sense.
Exactly, and I think this is the message, isn't it? That when we are active and present with our children, and we're whether that is it might be somebody else's children that we're active and present with. It might be like you with your volunteering. That children see that there is love and care out there. It's really really
Yeah.
important. Um, So that's what was coming up for me as you were also talking, that we show up fully for children. It's interesting, when I pulled a card this morning, I did one of my cards, and the card that I got was guiding children. And it
Mm,
says, you are good at helping, counselling, and healing children. Use your skills to help children now. And so, as we're talking on this, here today, it's like, this is actually about children,
yeah,
isn't it? It really,
yeah.
that's what we're coming back to. These boys, these young men, the influencers who are doing it, they're still young children at heart. I don't think they've evolved yet.
I've had a memory that's come back, and this is about a grown man who, and this was probably about 2 years ago. He got divorced, and was only with his kids, the every other weekend, maybe one night in the week kind of thing. And he was living in a one-bedroom flat because obviously he'd left the family home. The divorce was going through, and he was really resenting giving money to his ex-partner to pay the mortgage, to put a roof over his kids' heads, and he was angry. Um, and that is, the reality. As you take two incomes and one house and you then split it, everybody in a monetary sense is poorer.
Mm.
But he was seeing it as, this is my money, this is my that's my house she's living in, and it was all about it was all money and ego, and he was like really hurt. And he had clearly been watching some of this content online, because all of the stuff that he was saying, like, what have women ever invented?
Oh God.
Women just want to pick men, have babies, and then screw them over
Can
and
I
then
say
get a
what we've
paycheck.
invented? Babies.
Yes, absolutely. And the internet and the coding that you're watching this stuff on, it's just like, yes, we created,
Why
we're
didn't he say?
either
Why did Louis say that? You know what they've
oh, I
created?
know. Yeah,
Babies.
that's all he needed to say, wasn't
You.
it? Yeah, he created you. There you go.
Go on,
Um,
Louis.
but he was, yeah, this guy was absolutely then absorbed into this hatred. And I remember I was sat in a pub, and there were a load of maybe 20, 22 year olds, who are like our younger set, and then people our age. And we were all just saying to him, you've got this wrong. The way that you're talking, it's not healthy. Do you disrespect us? What, and even like the partners of these women were saying, come on, this is just horrible. And anyway, we've all naturally distanced ourselves from him because he just was so in it. Now,
Mm.
2 years later, thankfully, he's found his way out of that,
Good.
because things are a lot more settled. So, yes, it is about the children because we can hopefully influence them, but it's impacting
Yeah.
the men, who are feeling dejected and low self-worth. But it all comes back to money and ego is the tool, that and actually these I don't know whether he ended up buying the products from these people or going on to the Tate's courses online and handing over money. But that's all it is. It's just a blooming pyramid scheme saying, you can have what I have, give us £50 a month, and you can have what I have. And it's all money and ego. And actually, what your father represents is that actually it's about kindness, it's about being present, it's about protecting your loved ones, it's about experiences, everything that money and ego can't buy.
It is about honor. I think it's about honor. I think it's
That's a
about
good word.
respect. And I think it's about integrity. Because both me and you are self-employed. I've seen this happen in the spiritual domain, and I've watched, people, my peer groups, go off and take this sort of model and sell spirituality as enlightenment and abundance. And it's always made me feel a bit icky.
Oh,
And
yes.
just because I feel like we can really help people to open their hearts, to do deep work, to really, like, know who they are, show up on purpose. We can do all that work. We can't say to somebody, and you're going to be rich and famous, and
Mm.
that you'll have the most amazing abundance ever in your, that you could ever imagine. Like, I don't feel like we can actually promise
No,
that.
there's no snake oil
And
with
and I
us.
just and for me, it's like I want people to come and work with me because they're like, you know what, I need to do this for myself. And
Yes.
often people get promoted and great things happen and they meet the love of their life and all that stuff, and they have a baby or whatever, or they don't, and that's good for them. You know what I mean? And it creates all this amazing stuff in their lives. But I don't sell that because I feel like I don't know. I'm not in charge.
Sometimes they just find peace in their life.
Yes, and that is
Um,
brilliant.
yes,
And so
exactly.
so there's always something that people say to me like, "Oh, I love what you do, but I don't really know what you're selling." And I'm like, I struggle with it because I go, yeah, because I don't really want to sell the stuff that people are going to go buy.
Oh, come on, let's go. Hire a plane that never takes off. Get some pictures in there with our glitzy life, and just say you can have this if you get coaching.
It's
Oh,
not.
it's just so fake. But again, our honor and our integrity means that we would never do that because we never tell people what to do. And
Yeah,
I think that's the difference. And yes, I've been taken into some of these spiritual or new age healing stuff. And again, it becomes a cult unless you really believe in this. You're not one of us.
yeah, which
And
is
so
stinks of failure
don't
to
ask
me.
questions. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
setting people up for failure, and then they have to come back and do the next course, or
Yeah.
like there was more integrity back in the day when it was like you would actually buy a book and there would be stuff in there and you could do the processes, but they never sold you the lifestyle. They sold you the journey.
Yes.
I think that's what I'm realizing. Like I sell the journey to people, but it's their journey and they're on
Yeah.
it and I'm
And they
there.
have to do the work.
And they have to do the work and it's not going to be handed out to them for sure. And actually it's going to be a little bit messy for a bit and all the stuff that we
Well,
do.
that takes us nicely on to the next point, which is no one is coming to save us. And I
Yeah.
touched on this earlier when I said, there's a good message there for the young people that
Yeah.
no one is going to come and save you. Um, but it's that it's that part about the journey. Only you can get yourself out of it, and it never comes from a place of money, ego, hate, division.
Yeah.
The only thing that is going to save you is getting clear on what is it you want, where do you want to be? How are you going to get there? And how are you going to look at yourself in the mirror every day? And this was what was really powerful about the Louis Theroux documentary was right at the very end, it showed that HS Tiki Toki with his mum, and he was
Yeah.
still just a little boy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because actually behind it all, he just wanted his mum's love. He wanted to respect her. Actually, what was really, he was probably loving the fact that his mum was there with him and spending quality time. Because actually, that's all that matters, that the people around you are still there. Doesn't matter whether you got a million in the bank or whether you are, going hand to mouth. If you've got the people around you, then to me, my view of the world is you're a success.
I also think that this was probably much more manufactured than we think in terms of the production around, the program.
And it's always good in the edit, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's more like the production team. I mean, this is Louis Theroux. He's absolutely he's huge. So he's got really great people working there, pulling this together for him. He's also obviously fantastic as well. But it's really like I'm pretty sure there will have been things contractually that they had to do, and I have seen comments where women have said, "But where were the women's voices?" And there wasn't enough women's voices, and it looks like the conversations with the women in their lives were kind of a little bit through the back door. They
Yeah.
certainly weren't the central figures in the stories, were they? And there was a lot of uncomfortableness about that from what I was picking up, from the actual influencers. So there was, yeah, so there's that piece, but I'm pretty sure that the production teams would have said we need to speak to some of the women that are involved, and that will have been contracted, and so they had to do that to a certain point. So that's what I'm sensing with that because they will have
Yeah.
wanted their stories to be in there, but they're not the central figures.
I also think that we have to just take it for what it is. It was an hour and a half TV. It
Yeah,
was a documentary. If it had been a series of, six, eight documentaries, they could go into, right, let's hear about the women's impact. Let's go and talk to the youth workers. Let's talk about the people who've ended up in extremist groups as a result of doing this.
yeah,
Let's look at the people who took this pill and their life is worse because of it. There are so many complex angles. So when I hear people say, what about the women's voices? Well, Me and you are here talking about it.
Yeah, it's true.
It's given an avenue for women to speak and to have these conversations. It's given angles and permission for the parents to speak about it. So I don't like this like, well, whataboutism, because we're here doing the work.
Yeah,
It's an avenue, and if we don't show the uncomfortable one-sided truth of things, how are we ever going to go and learn about the other side?
absolutely. Let's get back into that. No one's coming to save us, because I know that in the times of my life when I've been in the deepest pain pit, I'm going to call it a pain pit. It's the word that's coming up. Like, I'm talking assault, I'm talking miscarriage, I am talking hit and run, accident. You know, I knew that I had to do my own deep work. I knew that
Yeah.
no one was going to come and make it better for me. Like, you cannot fix your way out of this. You also can't go, oh, this happened for a reason. And
Mm.
now I have changed. Like, no, like there is this deep, dark, dirty pit that you go into to do the like, oh my God, this happened to me. How did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? Why do I feel awful? How long will it take? Will I ever recover? Like all of that, it's messy and it can be quiet sometimes because we're in our cave doing the work. I just knew for me there was no pill that was ever gonna like take it away because it's
No playbook,
impossible. No
no book.
playbook. Um, that I was going to have to do this work. Now, people did come and show up for me, and I did have support and guidance, and they were the right people. I can look back at each and every one of them because for me, I'm going back, like it's weird, isn't it? Actually, when I look at it, it's my 30s, my 40s were like a lot happened in those 20 years that were like really deep, and I had to go face it. And then in doing that work, I had to face the stuff that was further back. Because as you start to sort of open up, things start to pop up, and you're like, oh, there's that, there's that, there's that. So doing this work, but so people came, people arrived, I met new people, I evolved, I became a coach, la la la. But then people also left, and
Yeah.
people left my world, and I let them. And for me, that's what empowerment is. It's like just to be like, I can take charge of what I'm going through. I will do the work. It doesn't matter how long it takes. People will show up, people will leave. I'm good with it all. Like, not good with it all, but there's just something in that that makes you go, I can do this. And even when I don't think I can, someone will arrive.
Do you know what though? I don't I don't know whether we'd in our teenage years or in our early 20s whether we could have done that journey.
No,
Um, but there does come a time where you start seeing patterns or you look at your life and you think something has to change or what's the learning here? I mean, that still makes me worry about these young boys who are seeing this content, who are hooked on porn, who are getting into gangs and things like that, because actually they can't get out of
no.
it by themselves. Yes, nobody is going to save them, but when they're children,
Oh, yeah,
come on,
no,
we need to be the grown-ups here. But let's hope
absolutely.
by the time they get to their 30s and 40s, they will do the healing and then they will then heal the next generation. Let's hope.
100%. Because that is the thing, isn't it? No, as children, we absolutely need the adults to show up for us, and for things to be, and the right systems and all of that. That absolutely has to happen. But there is just definitely some, because I feel like things happen, earlier on in our lives. Sometimes they happen to us, sometimes we are the ones activating it, but things happen and we have those experiences and we can't handle it in the moment, and no one can. Like, I don't know any child or, young adult who can handle
No, they
that.
haven't got the
So
skills.
they
They're
don't
not
know how.
developed.
But what I know about my own journey and from the journey of other people that I've seen is that whatever you need to heal, you will get the right lessons that will open you up later on in life as well. So later on
Yes.
in life, you get something happens, you unfold it if you choose to. Otherwise, you're just going to keep getting given the same things, and that later, and there's a point when you go, "Oh, there's a pattern here. Like, this is the fifth time that's happened to me in my life. It's the same message. It's the same truth. Am I going to go do that work now or not?" Like, that's how I've sort of arrived. And then I was
Well,
like,
we need the men
yes,
to go and do this work. And I always remember during the lockdown, I was listening to the Dare to Lead podcast, and somebody had cut Brené or her sister up, and they started like getting really angry, and she just shouted out the window, "Do your work, man! Do your work!" and then just drove off. And I think this is the bit like whatever age. The men are at young boys, we need to be there at their aid. Older, they need to do their work
Yeah.
and to save themselves. But just know that there's a whole village and a community out there who are willing to help them and support them. And on that note, we're going to close out now because we always talk far too long. So over to you, Karen.
So our message today is that we have to do our own inner work. No one is going to save us. The marketing of salvation, whether it's political, spiritual, entrepreneurial, is just noise. And the real work is listening to what feels right on the inside, because that's where true integrity lives. That's where our healing begins, and that's where we find real freedom. It's not in the perfectly packaged promises, but in the quiet strength of knowing that we're enough and that we're worth doing the work for. Thank you for listening to Say It Sister. If this episode resonated, share it with a friend who may need the reminder that they are not alone. There's no quick fix, but there is power in truth. And together we're learning to lead ourselves one honest conversation at a time.